Hey, everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT and Next TMT Talks. This is your podcast here with Gareth Capon, the CEO of Grabyo, which rhymes with video because that's what they do, which makes sense to me. And more importantly, they help companies grab video and do things with it. And the hot thing these days, actually, why don't you give us just the 2-minute bio of Grabyo? Because you guys have been around a while and you've been the CEO for a while. Talk a little bit about the arc and where we are now.
Sure. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me here. We started the business just over 10 years ago now, which is amazing to think about, to be honest. We started it as a live clipping company. So the idea of Grab was where the name came from, was grabbing clips of live television and sharing them on social media in real time, something which a decade ago was fairly novel and breakthrough, and now is a core part of most.
But it was kind of brain melting when you guys first started doing it. It's like, oh my God, they can do it live and throw up the highlights, and particularly for sports, that was crazy, right?
Absolutely, it was something that was incredibly new. There was concerns around rights, around the risk of cannibalization. People couldn't really get their heads around the thought of putting out free clips of the NFL or the FIFA World Cup or Wimbledon tennis on social media platforms for free in real time. So the technology was really innovative, but also the rights questions were quite important. And actually now, even a few years after that, but certainly now a decade later, it's fairly inconceivable that you wouldn't be able to get access to that content on.
It's a huge business, right? This is really important because particularly younger audiences, that's how they engage many times. They're not watching the whole 2-hour FIFA match at the EPL or wherever. They're watching the goals and a couple of good tries, that kind of thing. But that connects them to the brand and to the players and everything else. And if you don't have that, you're missing everything, correct? I mean, not everything, but it just leaves you with a much smaller audience, much less engagement and all the rest. So you're kind of vital glue for these sports leagues. Is that a good way to put it?
That's right. And I think you need to do both. I don't think we believe that there isn't huge demand from young people to watch live sports. That I actually genuinely think that there is. But what is evidently true is that they spend more time on their phone and smartphones and apps, and particularly social platforms, than they do watching traditional TV and even streaming services. So if you don't have a presence on those platforms and you're not providing the content where they're looking for it, then you're missing out on an enormous amount of engagement, particularly with those audiences that are younger. But I think there's a multi-generational need and demand for content to be available now, particularly in sport, but we see it with news and the entertainment as well, that when something's happened, people expect to be able to see it. And if they can't, they're going to go looking for it. So
they want it as soon as, the game doesn't need to be over for me to see the highlights. I want to catch up. I come in halfway through. I want to show me the highlights. And that's actually a business on these streaming services, right? You want to do a little catch up on the highlights, so then they go to the live action, right? So you're providing this, and really yours are the clips, both in a more traditional 16:9, but now the big push has been to verticals, and obviously that's mobile friendly, but it really opens things up in a whole new way, correct?
That's right. There are actually two sides to our business. The clipping and highlight short form video business that we started with, and about 5 years ago, we moved into live streaming, live production. So doing the things you would traditionally do in an outside broadcast truck or a TV studio, and building that in the cloud. So allowing people to essentially make TV shows or live events in a web browser rather than in a truck or in a studio. Switch the cameras, do the audio mixing, do the commentary graphics, all the things you do in a traditional TV environment. And the latest innovation in that space is around vertical video, as you mentioned. So actually taking a traditional broadcast, a horizontal stream that you'd see on TV or on a streaming service, and turning it into a vertical stream. So something in using AI to track the video, so you can actually watch on your phone or in a social feed in vertical format as it happens. So instead of creating a clip that you look at afterwards on TikTok or on Instagram Reels, you can actually watch a broadcast in vertical format with AI tracking the content, and that's completely new.
And you're doing that live pretty much. There's going to be a little tiny bit of latency there no matter what.
Yeah.
Obviously, no matter how good your compute is, there's just going to be some speed of light's the speed of light. Einstein told us, and he was pretty smart. But you're doing it in the cloud. That was a big shift. You no longer need 13 trucks at the venue. So now you can come in with a sufficiently adequate computer and connection and do that, mostly up in the cloud. And then you're chopping and doing all this stuff, but then you're outputting it not just in 16 by 9, but 9 by 16 and really unlocking, right? A huge audience that wants to watch it. It's like maybe they're an Uber driver and they want to watch the game in between trips or whatever. Hopefully not during the trips, but in between trips. For instance, they're not at a TV. Somebody can watch it wherever they are. Any sense of, because I know you work with a lot of different leagues and franchises, any sense of the scale of that vertical audience as a result of the opportunity now to watch these things in more than one way? I see a lot of the sports events here with higher numbers than ever, like going back 10, 15, 20 years back to the heyday of broadcast when and cable when that was it and audiences were kind of locked into fewer venues and fewer places to see things. So everything that did get shown got watched a lot. Now we're kind of back to that, but in a much more fragmented universe. Any idea of scale?
It's interesting. Most of what people would have looked at, if we talk specifically around vertical video, so mobile social video, then everything that we've seen today pretty much is outside of things shot on a phone by a creator has been short form, has been clips. It's the infinite scroll on TikTok or Instagram Reels, this thing which is now the expected behavior for mobile and social videos. You get a full screen vertical video on your phone, you flick through the clips. But most of that, as I say, isn't live. This is new in the sense that we can actually, and there's been some elements of vertical live streaming, but it's been fairly sporadic. Certainly for tier one of sport and big enterprises, because it's been so expensive, people had to do a whole new production to make it work. So we've seen a few independent examples. We've seen lots of creators doing stuff on their phones, and that's been hugely popular, on Instagram Reels and TikTok Live, where people are shooting stuff, behind the scenes content, athlete content. But this is different. This is taking an NBA game or an NFL game or a tennis or whatever it might be, and actually turning that into a live broadcast in real time using AI. This is new. So then, and we've just launched the service in partnership with AWS. But I'll give you an example from the weekend. This is pretty interesting. We ran an event, a skating event in Phoenix. It was a sort of a semi-pro event, which was traditionally shot for TV and streaming on YouTube. They
Ice
decided
skating
to put
in Phoenix? I just want to be clear. Ice skating in Phoenix?
Skateboarding.
Oh,
Rather than ice
skateboarding. Thank
skating.
you. Because I was like,
yeah,
this is not the season in Phoenix for ice skating.
it's not quite the weather in Phoenix for ice skating.
No matter
but
what their hockey team says, so.
That's right. They do have hockey in Vegas, which I always think is an interesting one. But
yes.
So this was skateboarding, and they put out the stream on YouTube, and we also helped them create a live stream on TikTok, which was vertical. And that stream did 3 times the viewing that the normal stream on YouTube did.
Wow.
So it says 2 things. One, as you mentioned, there is an untapped audience of people on social that you can reach that you couldn't reach before if you start to create the content and distribute it in this way. But also that audience may be bigger for certain formats than your traditional audience. And we don't think that's necessarily true for the largest sporting events, but it does show there is an enormous opportunity to take what is a traditional broadcast setup at very low cost in the cloud, turn it into something which is specifically built for a mobile social audience and get them engaged. Now, whether that's for different types of content, or it's pre-game, or it's about an alternative form of a broadcast, or it's working with creators, or it's getting them over to the main event on TV or streaming service. All of those things are true. But what is clear is that this is where a lot of the audience are all the time. And they're not necessarily sitting on the TV.
You mentioned something that's kind of interesting here. We've seen this rise of, the alt casts on, you've got the main guy, the main broadcast with the golden voice play-by-play guy and the former jock who's doing color. But then they're doing interesting other things. The Manning cast with the NFL is a good example. It's become its own sort of cultural phenomenon. But you could imagine, for instance, 2 screening that, right? So you've got the main thing going on there, and then you have your phone doing a vertical of, in this case, the Mannings bantering around like brothers, talking as well, because who needs to have any focus when they're doing anything online? Why start now? But I do find that, you're right about not just new opportunities, but new kinds of opportunities, not just bigger audiences, but different, like you can mix and match and do some interesting things. But this thing that you announced with AWS is transition productions and tagboard. And so that's really a whole workflow, right? So that's the thing in Hollywood. You find out it's like somebody's got a cool tool And Hollywood goes, yeah, that's cool, but I've been building this workflow for 20 years. I don't want to screw it up. I want to make it better. But how do I plug this into the things I'm already doing? And so what you guys are doing is creating this whole chunk of stuff that can be on top of the traditional broadcast, right? So without a whole lot of additional cost, because it's cloud-based, you don't need a lot of new equipment, you don't need a new truck, et cetera, et cetera. You're just taking the feed, plugging it in, doing the cloud magic, and outputting it, right? So that's the change. That's
That's
so
exactly
big.
right. I think that and one of the things that people miss when people look at vertical video, if we take that as the example here, there was this idea, well, I can just take my traditional broadcast and maybe I can run it through an AI tool and I can put it on TikTok and maybe I can even
Right.
make that work live. But then you've got to think about the consideration of what the viewer experience is. So the obvious one is graphics. You've got the score bug and the name stress flying in and out of the screen as the vertical crop moves around. That's the reason we work with
Right.
Tagboard. We can do graphics which are built for a vertical format for 916.
Okay. Right.
You've got to think about things like, like the audio mix. Maybe the audio mix should be different because a lot of the people are now almost exclusively listening on a phone. So are you doing a different audio setup for them? You mentioned creators.
You might have your headphones, right? But other than that, you're not probably rolling with 7.2 Dolby sound, 7.2.1 like you might have in your home theater setup or whatever, right? I mean, it's like,
That's exactly right.
okay, maybe you got Atmos on here, great. But other than that, that's about as good as it's going to get. And if you're going to broadcast it, but it's on TikTok. They're not known for super high fidelity audio. So you have to even figure out what do you do with that? I mean, because then it's just extra bandwidth that doesn't get heard, right?
That's right.
So
And then the creators piece I think you mentioned is the final one. Do you want to create not only a vertical experience, which is different, but actually you bring in creators, you change the format, you make the presentation different. We can do split screen, we can do 3 boxes. So you can use Grabyo as a production system, but to your earlier point, the most important thing is you don't need to change anything else. If you want to focus on doing the game or doing the news event or your music show or and so whatever it is, do that in a traditional way, get the feed out. But then once you put a clean feed into Grabyo, work with our Tagboard as our graphics provider, using our AI technologies, we can then provide a whole range of formats, whether that's a vertical stream on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, whether it's a creator format like the Manning Cast that you mentioned. We do lots of those types of shows with our customers already because it's low cost, it's easy to do. You don't need to be sitting in a studio. And you can do lots and lots of different formats. So our view is instead of having a single linear television format of a game or a news broadcast or a show, why don't you have 50 different versions of that, different languages, different presentation formats, different structures, different graphics, easy to do in the cloud. And actually some of the new things we're bringing out as we move into the next month, we are focused specifically around that. Actually doing different types of shows from a single control room. So actually doing multiple formats of a show in a single control room in the cloud.
That's pretty fascinating. I was at IBC last year and I lived to tell the tale. I was not actually lost for good in those cavernous, winding, badly signed halls forever, though I was a little worried. But it really was brought home to me talking to people with the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, and people with translation services about how challenging it is to do the thing in Europe. Many people speak English, yes, but they also speak something like 25 other languages, and they really tend to like those languages because that's the one they were born into. And so you have to be able to put this stuff out in something like football, as you guys call it, soccer, as we Philistines call it, that take care of all those audiences. But then you're talking about taking creators. I mean, like that whole swath of TikTok and Instagram and all those folks doing stuff, maybe commentary, who've got an audience, who've got an expertise of their own and a take on things, could be enormously attractive. Again, about getting things more sticky. I find that really fascinating. So LingoPal, you did a deal with them that you announced in February for strategic localization. So this is about the languaging, about captioning and subtitling, right?
That's right. We've got a number of AI services we built into the platform for a range of different models for, as you say, regionalization, localization. LingoPal is great for for commentary. So you take an English commentary feed and you convert it into a different language, from French, Spanish, or German, Japanese. We built a captioning service. So whenever you go on TikTok or Instagram, YouTube Shorts today, you often see captions on the screen because they know that not everyone is viewing it with sound. You've got your phone out and you don't have the audio on, so you're just scrolling through the content, and therefore you put captions on the screen. We built an AI tool for customers to build that, so they create a clip in Grabyo and they can put those captions onto that using AI in just a few seconds. We've got transcription tools for doing, if you want to do closed captions for broadcasting, you can use AI for that as well. So these are, as well as the vertical video services we just discussed. So our view is there is a whole range of opportunities around AI in production, but they need to be available on a use by use basis. Show by show,
Right.
things are going to be different. So we're providing this ecosystem of partners that we can integrate our platform, make it really easy for people to use, make it all SaaS. You pay by the hour. You don't have to make big commitments to taking these services on, and then you try out new formats and you see what works.
Right. I mean, I actually really like that because you're not making this big upfront commitment in equipment and staff and all that. Can be a much more modest. Let's see what this looks like. You can throw something against the wall and see if it sticks. All that kind of stuff. Now, I have heard that you are leaving lovely, never foggy London for the harsh, unremitting sunlight of Las Vegas, except when you go into the convention center and you see no sun for 12 hours, to go to NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters gathering that is coming up in just about, I think, eight or 10 days. Time's a wasted. You got a few announcements coming down the pike. What are you guys going to be talking about at NAB among all the stuff that's NAB?
We've already touched on one of the most important developments around
Right.
vertical video. So the AI service of vertical video for broadcasting, for production, for short form. We're going to show that to customers at the show and show how it works and show some examples of the things we've already done in the last few months. And we've got a couple of big things happening that weekend too, which will be good. So we can talk about those with one of the customers that's going to be running a big event that weekend. The other thing is on the production side, we've talked a lot about live production here, building a production system in the cloud, which is currently called Grabyo Producer. We've spent the last 12 to 18 months rebuilding the whole back-end system of that platform. So we're launching the next generation of that service called Grabyo Live, which will launch at NAB and is an entirely new architecture for the way that we build production services. So we've learned a lot in the last 5 years. Some things have worked really well. Some things have been more difficult to use for customers than they'd like, or harder to integrate. I'd say probably the biggest piece of feedback is that, and you'll know this, that TV production studios and systems are complicated. There's a lot of existing workflows, infrastructure, hardware, people, and our system
And
is
it's only getting worse, it feels like, right? It's like, oh my God, who knows how to connect this thing to this connector that I've never heard of from 1912 that Edison apparently invented, I mean, it's crazy in some ways. So.
That's right. And so we realized that much as we'd love everyone to just dump everything and move to the cloud and work out of a browser, it was probably unrealistic. So we've rebuilt the architecture of the platform. It's much open. The APIs are easy to integrate with. It's really composable and it's easy to create. As we talked about things like Manning casting templates, thousands of templates for different types of shows. We're going to make it really easy for people just to have the ability to come into Grabyo, go, right, I'm running this type of show in this region for, with this team, and I just turn it on, plug it in, get it running, and it's going to be really simple. So that's part of that is the feedback, but also this idea of how do you do more or less? How do you do four different language versions of a show in a single control room? How do you do vertical video alongside horizontal traditional streaming? How do you integrate this into third-party systems with APIs? All of that's going to get much, much easier. So we're pretty excited about this new platform.
Right. Well, there is nothing sexier than a new backend, at least to the tech guys that are going to be all over NAB. So you know your audience, and this is all about finding new audiences, and I think that's really important. Well, kind of cool. Where might you go next? What can you talk about in terms of the future? Because vertical video, absolutely a big thing. Disney Plus is now doing it. Fox is now doing it, particularly for sports highlights. I think Fox is doing some deals actually with creators specifically, and Disney's more about we're taking slices from our shows to market them more and, viral moments and all that stuff. They're being a little more cautious while still edging into this. But Fox is being pretty aggressive, and sports is really their big deal. So you can imagine they want to triple down on that, and not just double down. But where do you see things going? Any big picture vision? Since you've been at this for a while, you've had a chance to really assess the landscape and kind of guide your company forward in a lot of ways.
I think that the vision that we started with when we started Grabyo was that the part of the industry in media that hadn't been digitized was the production. The
Mm.
capture is there's lots of CGI and AI technologies and software improvements around. You still have cameras, but there's a lot of software around the creation, particularly with AI now. A lot of software around the and compute around the creation of content. Distribution is all moving to streaming IP. That's pretty clear. That is a trend that is not going away. Everything's going to be some form of IP if it's not already in some markets. The bit in the middle was very traditional, lots of hardware, trucks, cabling, servers, physical infrastructure. Our view was that had to change. There was a big chunk of the market that would move to fully distributed cloud platforms and systems like ours. That transition is starting to happen. It's definitely happened for lots of ancillary content. We talk about altcasts, vertical video, these things which sit alongside the traditional production. That's already happening. We see a lot of but mainstream production moving. Tier 2, Tier 3 sports moving their entire production remotely into the cloud. Outside broadcasts and live events, all of the vertical shows, working with creators to build these new forms of distribution. All of that is so much more effective and cost effective and efficient when done in the cloud rather than in a traditional studio or gallery. And then you layer on all the AI services on top of that. It's so much easier for us as a cloud native platform to build in AI services than it is trying to put it into a hardware box. We see the
Absolutely.
combination of those two things happening. I'm not sure that the tier one, the NFLs, the NBAs of the world are going to move their game production to the cloud now. Maybe it happens in the next 3 to 5 years.
It
Who
may
knows?
take a couple of weeks, is what you're saying. So,
Yeah,
but
but there's a
I
lot to
think
move.
your real opportunity, Gareth. I want to apologize for interrupting. I think one of your real opportunities is you mentioned tier 2 and tier 3. There are thousands of sports leagues in America because apparently that's what we do. But I imagine it's the same in other countries, maybe different sports. But those smaller leagues have an audience, but they can't always reach them. But now all of a sudden, you're talking about tools that are scalable and priced inexpensively. So the front end jumping into it isn't that big a deal. So all of a sudden, they can find an audience on phones, for instance, that they don't need to have a broadcast deal to matter, right? They could find an audience online with a vertical cast using tools like what you guys have, your system in a box basically here, and start to get that sticky connection with their fans. And then that may be a whole new, it's that bottom tier that was always kind of shut out because they weren't big enough to justify a broadcast or even cable deal. I'm guessing that's an opportunity there, right? I mean, maybe not your
That's right.
first opportunity, but an opportunity.
That's
Absolutely.
right. That's how we see the market developing for us, and certainly in the short term. With
Yeah.
the tier one, the top end, where many of our customers are today, it's about supporting vertical video, all cast, traditional, extending productions to make it more local, more interesting, new formats, creative formats. But then everything
Yeah.
below that, there's an opportunity to say, well, you can move all of it to the cloud. You can just have cameras and microphones at a sporting event, and everything else can be done by people in who could sit in 3 different countries if you wanted to and work together on a production. The technology is there today. There is some change in operations and maybe some thought from the industry that needs to happen. But the cost benefit and the opportunity to reach a greater audience is so important and makes such a difference that you can genuinely change the trajectory of some of these industries. And we know that you can only have to look across the RSN landscape, for example, to see there has been challenges in the way that the model has worked. So there needs
Yes.
to be a change in some of the economics, and there needs to be a way to find new audiences. And we believe we're well placed as a technology company to support that.
I think you're probably right about that. I have only one regret in this conversation, which was we did not use Grabio's technology to output this in a vertical format in Mandarin Chinese, Swahili, and Danish, because the Danes. But next time. In the
Next
meantime,
time.
Gareth, where's your booth going to be at NAB? If people want to stop by and say hi and speak
Yeah,
on
we're
London.
in the West. We're in the West Hall, very close to the AWS stand. So if you it's a bit easier to find the AWS stand than ours. So you
Yeah,
head
that
there.
one's
We'll
like the sun.
That's
And
right.
you're a planet rotating around him. I totally understand how that works. Anyway, well, great. Well, this is David Bloom with Next TMT and Next TMT Talks here with Gareth Capon, CEO of Grabyo, the video cloud-based, how do we put this? Cloud-based vertical live stream production, and also traditional stuff, doing clips, doing live output, pretty cool stuff. Check them out, NAB. We'll be there as well. And with that, thanks for tuning in. This is David Bloom, over and out.